So, welcome. This is webinar 6 in our series, so the final one in our series about the DfE's writing framework, which was published on the 8th of July 2025. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Katie Armstrong. I'm the Hub Lead here at Flying High English Hub. We know that the writing framework is non-statutory guidance which articulates a common approach to teaching writing, and it's rooted in evidence and existing good practice. So today I'm really pleased to talk to you about how to support pupils who need additional instruction or practice. So this session will focus on children who require that additional support in class or through targeted intervention to help close the attainment gap for them. It doesn't, however, extend to pupils with profound and complex needs. So in all cases, it's essential to maintain high aspirations for every child, ensuring that support strategies enable them to achieve their full potential. School leaders are responsible for making sure that all pupils, including those with SEND, have high quality writing teaching in a way that's accessible to them and it's appropriate for their needs and enables them to make progress. So we're focusing on those children that need extra support in the lesson today, not those that particularly need a bespoke curriculum or have more complex needs. We have now completed, or after this one we will have completed the full series of the writing framework webinars, and you can see the titles on the screen there. If you did miss any of them at all, please do let us know, drop us an email and we can send you the recordings. The links will also be available on our newsletter that's going to come out in the next few days. If you are subscribed to that too, you'll be able to find them there. Okay, keeping up from the start then. So we know that high quality teaching is essential for all children, and leaders and teachers should aim that every child gets the best start in writing from the very beginning. High quality teaching is central to ensuring that all pupils are given the best possible opportunity to achieve. However, some pupils may find it more difficult than others to make progress in writing. Pupils who find writing difficult are likely to struggle across the curriculum. And what we need to do as teachers is to ideally try to preempt the writing difficulties before they occur. So if a child joins reception with speech, language and communication needs, teachers should be alert to the fact that this may have an impact on their writing development and then be proactive in supporting them. For example, a child with working memory difficulties may struggle to hold a sentence in their head and write it down, forgetting what it was that they planned to write. They could be supported using visual scaffolds such as sentence frames. In order to write, children need to be able to compose orally. They need to be able to say out loud what it is that their sentences that they would like to write. They also need to know how to spell, form letters and punctuate correctly. However, Ofsted's Strong Foundations in the First Years of School report describes how some curriculums do not sequence this knowledge coherently and sequentially. They expect children to work on tasks that are well beyond their competence. For example, children in the reception year are often asked to write stories or about recent events before they've learned the necessary knowledge and skills. Or children in a Year 1 class might be expected to write a character description, even though some of them still cannot form all of their letters or write recognisable words. This kind of expectation places pressure on children's working memory and adds to their cognitive load, and is particularly difficult for children with low starting points. The writing framework emphasises that pupils should not be expected to write at length before they are ready. First, pupils need to master the foundations of writing: handwriting, spelling, and sentence construction. Teaching handwriting and spelling from the reception year is crucial to ensure that these skills become automatic for children. This will then free up their working memory for composition. Ofsted also identified in their research and analysis that teaching handwriting only in phonics sessions, as some schools do, is part of the problem. It means that children do not learn the basics of letter formation that establish the foundations for speedy and fluent handwriting later on. Phonics programmes provide limited opportunities for writing, particularly for dictation and for handwriting practice. Schools should, therefore, avoid relying solely on these programmes to develop children's writing skills. Writing places a significant demand on pupils' working memory, so it's vital to teach it in a sequenced way that helps to manage these demands. It's essential to separate transcription and composition to limit cognitive load. And as you can see from Ofsted's diagram here, when we're thinking about transcription, we need to be considering the child's grip on their pen or pencil, the letter formation and whether they're being done accurately, and having at least one way to spell each phoneme. In terms of oral composition, we're thinking about their sentence structure, using that rich vocabulary, using story language and a story structure. And we know once we've developed children's language skills, often their oral composition skills are much higher than their transcription skills initially. And we need to work to try and raise these to a similar level so that children are able to write at a longer length later on in school. Key features of high quality handwriting. So we know that high quality teaching is key to ensuring that all children keep up. And it's vital that a structured approach is in place that ensures children are taught a pencil grip, that models accurate letter formation, that ensures regular practice happens and uses ready to write routines. And it needs to be delivered in a short focus session, ideally daily. Care must be taken to ensure that teaching is consolidated to avoid reinforcing pupils' handwriting errors. Ensure sufficient opportunities for pupils to practice their correct formation. Teachers should intervene immediately if a child forms a letter incorrectly, so that incorrect letter formation does not become a habit that is difficult to undo later on. Dictation is another strategy that helps to manage the cognitive demands of writing in the early years and Key Stage 1. Dictating a sentence reduces cognitive load for early writers by freeing them from having to think of the words for the sentence, hold them in their mind, and spell them. It enables them to focus on the physical act of writing. The dictated sentence should only contain the GPCs that the children have already learnt, so that they can retrieve them from their memory and apply them accurately. Dictation can begin with simple words and gradually build to simple sentences. It could link to the phonics lesson or be inspired by a class text. There are some examples on the screen. So if we're going on a bear hunt, the children might be dictated a simple sentence like the woods are big and dark. In Dear Zoo, they might write a simple sentence that's dictated about the creature that was sent. So here we've got the example, the zoo sent me a dog and he was just right. If you're reading The Enormous Turnip, they might write a speech bubble, something like on the screen there you can see, I can pull the turnip. But it needs to be linked to the GPCs that children have been taught so that they can apply them accurately. When we're writing in other subjects, as well as in the writing lesson, children should be encouraged to use only known GPCs. And again, you've got examples there on the screen of how that might work. So thinking about readiness to write, we need to consider children's social and emotional readiness. So here we've got a short video from the hub lead over at Witham St Hughes English Hub. This is Sophie Hurst, and she's going to talk about how they supported children's social and emotional needs and ensuring an emotionally positive and secure environment for writing.
In your class, you have a child who is struggling socially or emotionally. How best can you support them? Emotional development sits at the very centre of children's growth as writers, particularly in the development of transcription skills. Children typically move through 4 stages of competency. The most vulnerable point occurs when they are aware that there are things that they cannot yet do, but they have not fully developed confidence or stamina to attempt them independently. This is a fragile stage and it requires sensitive, deliberate management within our classrooms. To support children effectively, we must revisit Maslow's hierarchy of needs. First and foremost, a child's psychological needs must be met. Beyond this, they must feel safe, free from worry, danger, or uncertainty. For our children struggling emotionally especially, the need for love and belonging is crucial. They must genuinely believe that the adults in the room care about them. Secure connections and appropriate attachments help them to feel protected and valued, and knowing that someone is looking out for them gives rise to feelings of respect and, importantly, self-respect. From here, we move upwards to esteem, with a particular focus on self-esteem, which is fundamental to writing development. When children have a strong, trusting relationship with an adult who consistently recognises their efforts and celebrates their progress, we see clear improvements in their confidence, displaying their work on walls, placing photographs of them around the room, and visibly valuing their contributions helps them to develop a deep sense of belonging. Ultimately, this supports them in reaching self-acquisition, the stage at which they begin to believe, I can do this, and start to see themselves as writers. So children who are in the stage of conscious incompetence often articulate their uncertainty with comments such as, but I can't write. They are aware of the gap between what they want to do and what they can currently achieve. Our role is to guide them carefully through this stage, enabling them to move towards conscious competence, where they recognise their progress and begin to view themselves as capable future writers. This is why emotional development is so deeply intertwined with early writing. We must create an emotionally positive, secure and supportive environment, one in which children feel safe, valued and confident enough to take risks, practice new skills and ultimately flourish as writers. Social development plays a crucial role in the child's growth as a writer. To nurture this, we must continually return to two fundamental questions. What is the purpose of writing, and why do we write? At its core, writing is a form of communication. It is inherently social. This is a message we need to reinforce for children consistently. Writing exists to share ideas, to connect with others, and to express meaning. To support this, we must ensure that children are always given a really clear context and a meaningful purpose to their writing. This is particularly important for reluctant writers. When they see a tangible reason to write, their engagement and motivation naturally increases. There is also a strong link to play. Children need to experience writing as an integrated part of their games and role play. While there will be moments where writing becomes more formal, it is essential that children also find enjoyment in it and understand how it fits naturally into their imaginative worlds. Adults play a key role in this process. Through careful modelling, we can demonstrate what purposeful writing looks like and show children how incorporating writing into their play can enhance their ideas, stories and interactions.
With this in mind, the bullet points on the slide that you can see there offer some helpful clues about pupils who may be experiencing social and emotional barriers to writing and some key practices to support them to become ready to write. So you can see on the left, we've got things to look out for. So whether that's difficulty establishing and maintaining relationships, being distracted or struggling to attend, destroying work or property, there are things we can do. So things like prioritising relationships and getting to know our children really well, offering lots of praise and breaking down tasks so they don't feel overwhelming to the children. Some children will naturally choose to write during play, so it's helpful to provide pencils and paper in areas such as role play, for example, to write a shopping list or take an order in a cafe. However, emergent writing is not a stage of writing that children must pass through before they can form letters or write words. Children need explicit, systematic teaching to develop the transcription skills of handwriting and spelling, as well as to learn how to compose sentences. Dr. Julian Grenier, CBE, recommends before starting handwriting instruction, it's important to check that every child has the preceding physical skills they need for success. These include having the core muscle strength to sit at a table with good posture and their feet on the ground, having the gross motor skills they need, for example, control over the shoulder and elbow movements, having the fine motor skills they need to hold a pencil with an appropriate grip. Children also need to understand the language of movement. Do they know words like up, down and round? Where children have not yet secured these skills, it's important to prioritise daily support for their physical development. That means when they start handwriting instruction, they will be able to succeed. Claire Seeley, OBE, Head of Educational Improvement in the States of Guernsey, makes the important point that the fine and gross motor control that underpin the physicality of writing need careful, needs-led planning, in tandem with, not instead of or prior to, explicit teaching of pencil grip and letter formation. This should include activities that build core and shoulder strength, as well as hand and finger strength. Letter formation practice can take place at a variety of scales and contexts. For example, in the air, tracing letters in thin layers of sand, and not only on paper, to provide scaffolded practice that reduces the fine motor demands. And Dr. Sally Payne, professional advisor at the Royal College of Occupational Therapists, makes the case for ensuring that opportunities to build fine and gross motor skills are provided alongside handwriting instruction. Children need a level of physical skills to be ready for writing, such as being able to sit comfortably, move their arms freely away from their body, and the ability to grip and release objects with control. However, it's important not to overly focus on the correct posture or pencil grip. Establishing correct letter formation early is more important, as errors can be difficult to correct later. Young children should be given opportunities to build the fine and gross motor skills that support handwriting through play. This includes activities that promote balance, coordination, and dexterity. Alongside specific handwriting practice, this will help children develop a comfortable and efficient pencil grip and writing position. It's important to identify as early as possible which children will need additional support, the specific difficulties that they face, and the precise intervention required. Difficulties with writing can show up in several ways. Teachers should look out for pupils who write slowly, who struggle to apply knowledge from one context to another, are demotivated, or are quiet in class. We need to identify the specific element that a pupil finds difficult. What aspect of writing is it? Is it handwriting? Is it their knowledge of GPCs to use for spelling? Is it other aspects of spelling? Is it sentence structure and grammar, composition, or language? Many pupils experience difficulties when learning to write, regardless of whether they have an identified SEND. While diagnostic labels may be useful, evidence suggests that writing difficulties are similar across pupils both with and without disabilities. Teachers will need to move beyond diagnostic labels and identify the area in the writing process that the children are finding challenging. Some children may need extensive practice orally composing sentences, and others may benefit from continuing with dictated sentences into Year 2 and beyond if they've not yet mastered sentence structure or need further consolidation of GPCs. Children who struggle with these foundations gain little from an adult scribing a sentence for them to copy. Instead, they need targeted teaching that directly addresses their specific gaps so they can develop the skills required for independent writing. It isn't always possible to know what the problem is by looking at a piece of writing. Before considering what writing support a pupil may need, it's important to consider their needs as a whole, including how speaking or reading support should be prioritised. Focusing support on writing when there are difficulties with reading or speaking may not be beneficial. Across the school, regular formative assessment, including observing pupils as they write, will help to identify those who are likely to need additional support. The accompanying document gives some examples of what effective support with the handwriting lesson might look like. So at the end of this webinar, we will send an accompanying document to you that will have some examples in, and we're also going to consider some of the case studies within that document in the next few slides. Schools should aim to provide additional writing support within the writing lesson. Tackling the aspects of writing that a pupil finds difficult during whole class teaching will make sure that pupils are included, and it avoids them missing out on other areas of the curriculum. Teachers should consider how to adapt their practice and provide the support that might be needed to respond to pupils' strengths and needs. A sound knowledge of the processes that underpin writing enable teachers to respond flexibly to the challenges faced by pupils with writing difficulties. In handwriting, teachers will easily spot pupils who are struggling through noticing, for example, poor letter formation or poor pencil grip. These pupils will find composition difficult as their working memory is heavily loaded with the demands of transcription. Teachers should consider providing individual support during the handwriting lesson to improve the aspect the pupil struggles with. Regular instruction, an opportunity to practice handwriting, which should be done urgently with the outcomes monitored. Whether it might be appropriate to provide extra time to complete writing activities, since more time can be helpful for pupils who have writing difficulty. Supporting pupils with writing through digital devices, particularly when transcription is a barrier to composition. Copying or tracing letters can be helpful for pupils, particularly when they have difficulty with manual dexterity and forming the letters correctly. Children should be supervised to ensure they pay full attention to how letters and joins are formed, and they should be supported to build a strong mental model of the movement patterns that underpin letter formation. There are some case studies in the accompanying booklet which provide examples of the handwriting challenges faced by some pupils and the support that was put in place. Pupils who struggle with spelling will find it difficult to attend to composition. It can slow down their writing as greater hesitation occurs. This is true even when the demands on working memory are fewer and composition is not required, such as during dictation and copying tasks. Phonics is the primary way to teach spelling. Teachers should access pupils' knowledge of GPCs and their spelling should be regularly assessed. Pupils who continue to struggle with spelling beyond the Key Stage 1 phonics programme may benefit from continuing with phonics for spelling. They may also benefit from explicit teaching of morphology and etymology. Supporting composition within the lesson. Pupils may struggle with composition at any or all phases of the writing process. Pupils need their teacher's support to master the individual elements of composition that are more difficult for them. Teachers, therefore, need to work to understand what the difficulty is and provide focused teaching and additional instruction during the whole class lesson to tackle it. Support could include, for example, providing increased opportunities for oral rehearsal and additional scaffolding, such as sentence stems. Additionally, using recording devices can help pupils play back their work in stages as they write. You can find a case study booklet which explains the difficulties that one child, Isabel, experiences with writing a dictated sentence and outlines the support provided by the teacher. Supporting pupils with their language. Pupils who experience difficulties in vocabulary will be less articulate and precise in their writing. Difficulties could include struggling to understand and use subject-specific vocabulary or selecting appropriate words or more ambitious vocabulary. These pupils may need extra support during the lesson in each phase of the writing process. This could include providing additional opportunities for talking during the planning stage, consolidating teaching and learning of subject-specific vocabulary, more opportunities for oral rehearsal, or more extended use of sentence stems. Creating a language-rich school helps to support writing. At the Lighthouse Schools Partnership, teachers use diagnostic assessment and responsive in-lesson support to identify precisely which aspect of writing a pupil finds difficult. This builds on their writing progression, which carefully breaks down the writing sequence and termly objectives for our teachers to plan and deliver the writing curriculum. This case study demonstrates how a teacher at Lighthouse Schools Partnership supports children in Year 5 whose language and vocabulary difficulties are a barrier to writing. In Year 5, several pupils were struggling to write quality pieces of work. Their grammar was accurate, but they lacked the variety and precise vocabulary needed for detail or clarity. Diagnostic talk activities reveal that their challenge lies in language and vocabulary, and not in sentence structure and grammar. So the teacher had in-lesson responses, and these included building in targeted oral rehearsal and vocabulary selection tasks, using subject-specific vocabulary banks during the lesson, modelling during shared writing, highlighted how and why writers chose particular words. The teacher then followed up with regular structured talk, explicit vocabulary teaching, and re-exposure to key terms to deepen pupils' language knowledge. You'll also find case studies in the booklet that we'll provide for you about Farah, a pupil with English as an additional language. In Year 1, the teacher noticed that Farah, who has a secure phonics knowledge, was writing isolated words rather than full sentences. During oral rehearsal, she also sometimes used non-standard word order and incorrect tenses, showing that her difficulty lied in English sentence structure and language, not ideas or transcription. Again, this is another pupil from the Lighthouse Schools partnership. And in the lesson, the teacher's response was to provide simple sentence stems with visuals, ensure opportunities for Farah to rehearse her sentence with a talk partner before writing, and provide a small visual vocabulary bank to support adjective and noun choices. After the lesson, this was followed up with oral sentence building games and explicit teaching of simple patterns to help Farah gain confidence and independence. It's important to note that the framework does not provide guidance that extends to pupils with profound and complex needs. These children will often need specific support that's carefully tailored to them and their needs, and may involve working closely with the SENCO to ensure strategies meet a child's individual needs. There may be circumstances where individual support, separate from whole class teaching, is required, and this should be carefully considered. Accurate targeting of interventions requires that the pupil's difficulties can be reliably ascertained, and that these differ from what would be expected by children developing typically in the educational and social context. Now we'll hear from Rachel Davis, MBE, who's the strategic lead at Little Sutton English Hub. She's going to talk to us about Jayden and the handwriting difficulty he faced and the support that was put in place to help him.
Jayden found it difficult to hold a pencil with a firm enough grip and had difficulty forming letters. The following approach was taken: identification of the precise area of difficulty, explicit teaching, repeated practice, specific feedback with lots of encouragement, providing parents with resources and exercises and activities which can further support motor development. A precise plan was put in place with activities thoughtfully designed to develop Jayden's pencil grip. This was shared with all reception staff so they knew clearly how to support Jayden. On a daily basis, in continuous provision, specific activities were identified for Jayden to build his gross motor skills, and in particular to develop control in his shoulder and elbow movements, including climbing low playground structures, walking along beams, throwing and catching soft balls and beanbags, and specific shoulder exercises. This enabled Jayden to develop his core strength to be able to sit upright and maintain stability. Lunchtime supervisors and play leaders encouraged Jayden to practice these activities along with his friends on the playground at lunchtime. Lots of opportunities were organised to develop Jayden's fine motor skills and specifically help with his grip. Initially large tweezers and picking up small objects like cotton wool balls, and then moving on to smaller tweezers to more resistance to pick up smaller objects, including beads and buttons, threading beads onto a shoelace, and moving on to small beads on a pipe cleaner. Following this, Jayden used different sized tweezers to practice his hand-eye coordination, manual dexterity, and motor precision. Jayden found it difficult to hold a pencil with a firm enough grip.
Oh, not quite sure why I paused there. Bear with me a second.
Twice a day, Jayden had one-to-one, short, focused in shape, and tracing over it with his finger and motor precision. Other activities included opening a box with keys to practice wrist action and clockwise movement, scrunching paper into tight balls, playing with Play-Doh and other resistant materials, squeezing pegs, making pegboard patterns and leaf rubbings with a wax crayon. In addition, Jayden worked with a small group of children on making pipe cleaners into a round shape and tracing over it with his finger to understand what round meant. Twice a day, Jayden had one-to-one short, focused intervention for 5 minutes from a trained teaching assistant who was clear about the steps to success following the plan and how to give precise feedback. The first session took place during registration and the second session during the afternoon. The teaching assistant began with specific hand warm-up exercises to improve Jayden's coordination and prepare him for controlled movements with precision. The intervention focused on pre-writing lines and patterns to practice the different types of strokes and curves that would develop his fine motor control and prepare him for letter formation. These started off as large movements and were refined to smaller movements. This included horizontal and vertical lines, wavy lines, up and down curves, circles, crosses and zigzags. Jayden began by copying the teaching assistant making a pattern in the air with the finger of his dominant hand, with the teaching assistant facing forwards and demonstrating the correct starting point and direction of the pattern, describing what she was doing using the terminology of round, back up the line as she drew the pattern in the air. She then helped Jayden to position his arm in the correct place, stood in front and slightly to the right of Jayden, demonstrating as she looked over her shoulder to check on Jayden's pattern formation, encouraging him to join in with the letter formation phrases. Jayden then practiced making the patterns on his palm, which helped him to connect the shape of the letter with the physical feel of it. He was taught a specific routine for pencil grip, pinch and flip, to help his muscle memory every time he picked up a pencil. He was given a rubber pencil grip to help the positioning and grip of the pencil. He then practiced the patterns on paper. The short, regular and focused practice helped Jayden to develop his pencil grip, catch up and then join his group for their handwriting lesson. He was seated next to the teacher so she could closely observe him and intervene swiftly before she moved around the group to check their letter formation. The letters in each family were introduced one at a time in the order of the programme being followed, with clear modelling by the teacher of following the routine of forming the letter in the air and on his palm. The teacher used letter formation phrases and encouraged Jayden to say them to support with remembering the formation. Jayden traced over the letter on a card before tracing over the letter in his book with his finger, then his pencil, before moving on to writing the letter independently. He continued to have pre-tutoring in the morning and afternoon daily for 5 minutes to practice the new letter so he could keep up. The teacher met with his parent to clearly identify the aspects Jayden had difficulty with and the specific activities to support. She provided his mum with resources and exercises and activities to further support his motor development, including shoulder exercises. Resources sent home included Play-Doh with an activity sheet and a small box of Lego. Strategies that were successful: early identification, swift action, precise intervention, adapted teaching and resources to respond to the need, all staff aware of the need and providing support throughout the day, building strong routines, exercises to build fine and large motor skills, having a specific and memorable routine to teach pencil grip, providing a writing grip aid, taught in small steps, daily pre-tutoring and additional practice, ongoing teacher assessment and review of the intervention and adaptations, meeting with the parent and giving specific activities to practice at home. So what was the impact? Jayden developed a good pencil grip and caught up with the class. The additional practice helped him to keep up. Over time, his formation of letters reduced in size as his skills developed.
So we also need to think about the role of the Senko. So pupils with SEND may progress at a different rate to their peers, and teachers should be focused on understanding the specific barriers that these pupils face with writing and what it is that they need. The graduated approach of assess, plan, do, review will help teachers working alongside the SENCO where needed to build an ongoing understanding of pupils' needs and to provide support that is tailored to individuals. Next steps then, if you haven't already, please do go back and read the writing framework, particularly following on from today's webinar, focusing on the section of pupils who need the most support. We will also send out to you, like I've already mentioned, with the recording link from today, the accompanying booklet that shows case studies of effective practice for identifying areas of difficulty and adapting support. But I hope you found this session useful. And like I said earlier, if you haven't already accessed the previous webinars, please do get in touch and let us know, and we can send those recordings over to you.